Yeah. Once again, we are back to another Boom Back Breakfast right here on the Remix Morning Show on Black Power Media. I go by the name of the Ear Doctor, and your host for today is no other than Dr. Jared Ball. And burn it down, Kim Brown.
Yeah. Greetings, everybody, and get in here. What's up, Kim? What's up, Ear Doctor?
Morning, Jared. Good morning, Ear Doctor. Good morning, Africans in the chat.
Yes. Greetings to all the Africans and others and those joining us from around the world. Welcome to another edition of the Remix Morning Show, Boom Bap Breakfast here at Black Power Media. It's always a pleasure to be back and see all these good people. And to see, you never know who is and is not going to be on deck. So it's good to be surprised by who is who makes it and when they make it and all that kind of stuff.
So it's like a surprise, man. That's what we love about the Remix Morning Show.
You never know what you're gonna get.
I mean, shit, Cornell could pop up here. Like, what's up?
You never know. Hey, he might. You know what I'm saying? He might. You know.
Speaking of Cornell.
Hey.
Oh wow.
Hey.
Wow. Blow, blow, shots fired first thing in the morning.
And no other than Kamal K. Franklin. Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm here just in time. I'm just in time for the bad jokes.
You in time for them El DeBarge jokes, sir. Right on time.
Wow.
And I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Don't get me started after I have my coffee. There'll be part 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's a nice shirt.
Careful, everybody.
You look like the sea.
Who, Gerard?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a lovely blue. Gerard is wearing blue, that.
Yeah. It's like the ocean.
Hey, it's my new. It's the latest. My African clothing stylist passed through and laced me with the latest threads
from Nairobi.
I figured,
them Nairobian threads. Yes, sir.
This is probably. I don't, you know what? I don't even know. I got to double check on the specifics. It's a Southern Sudanese connect, but I don't know where exactly the clothing came from.
Is that Sean King hookup? That Sean King Tanzanian cotton hookup? You can just.
No, I can't afford Sean King. I cannot afford Sean King. And if I spend $50 on some clothing, it got to have a pattern or something on it. It got to say something. You got to say something.
Or something. Shit just can't be a regular ass Hanes t-shirt. This nigga like, hey, this is cotton from Tanzania.
$75. And on the tag, it says Kingwear or some shit like that.
I was going to say, because remember that dude that they, what was it? One of those cults where he was branding the women and was claiming it was a symbol, but it was really his initials.
The Nexium or the
Yeah, I think that, something like that. Right. I could see Sean, like you think it's a plain black t-shirt, but then in a certain light, you see SK come out or something.
You belong to me.
You are gotcha on the back. Gotcha.
Crazy.
Anyway, what's going on today? What's happening in the world? How you all feeling today?
I got a quick question because this is about what's appropriate for kids. I let my kids watch. Your shirt reminded me of this in some way. I let my kids watch Jaws 1 and Jaws 2, and one is 6 and one is 9. Mm-hmm. Is that appropriate or not? I feel like the technology is so old.
Yes.
Like, the visual effects, it's almost like comical. Yes. It's like a balloon shark these days. When I was young, it looked like a real shark. But that's okay?
Well, I watched. I don't think it's a problem. I think everything's in context. So if you are parenting in a certain way, if you're present as it's being watched, I think it can mitigate some of the harm. But my thing though, what you reminded me though, I don't remember the second one. But I do remember seeing recently a documentary about the making of Jaws. And what was fascinating was that because of their budget constraints and a whole bunch of other drama, and then some stylistic choices, you never actually see the shark. So that was like it's like a trick of filmmaking to terrify you. But you never actually see this gruesome animal doing all this damage, which is pretty slick, given
Only
so in some way it may not have been so bad. It might not have been so bad.
In the second one, they show you, but then when they show you, it's almost like who's lifting the balloon out the water? You know what I mean?
Right,
It's like a balloon
right.
looking thing. So it's not as scary. Again, when you're, we were younger, and I forget how old they are. They were made like in the 1970s. I think I fooled myself into thinking the Jaws was like an 80s thing, but it's really a late 70s thing. And so when you see it, now, it just looks like some helium balloon that somebody's got his hand in and going like this or something like that. So it's not as scary, but they do show a couple of amputations and bad blood spills, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's theater of the mind, right? That's the whole utilization of the imagination that they try to instills that suspense and the horror. I don't care, but if I guess I let them watch Jaws. But it's a whack movie, like of all movies. Like, why do you of all scary movies? You know what I mean? Like, come on now, if you're gonna scare the kids, give them some good Freddy Krueger. Make it worth their while out here. Come out.
See, but that's what I thought. I felt like this was a little in between that. It was like, this ain't crazy. But, they interested in like sharks. They like water. And I forgot why they saw a preview of it on some Netflix thing, whatever. And so they got all into it. I was like, all right, let's see. This might be fun.
Well,
but see, back in the 70s. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Were they afraid of it, or did they enjoy it? Did they laugh?
They liked it so much they wanted to see Jaws 2. And now they want to see Jaws 3. I was like, I stopped after the first. I was like, Jaws 3 and 4 were really bad. In fact, Jaws 4, I looked at the preview. Basically, the shark seeks out the family. The family is moved to the Caribbean, and somehow the shark decides, I'm going to get this family for killing my other 2 shark friends or family, whatever it is. I was like, really? Was that the premise?
Your kids are probably like, when does it get scary? Like, maybe if we keep watching it, it'll eventually get scary. And they're like, But look, I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, before parents started caring about their children, I feel like I saw everything. I was watching Faces of Death videos with I don't know if people remember that, like when VHS became a thing and people started having machines, or we had to go rent the machine with the video to bring home. But and you getting somebody with a rental card to get you in there and we were like, it was I feel like. So now it's like, I don't know, but we didn't let our kids. We are helicopter parents, I think they call it now. Like we just got our 15-year-old her first phone.
Oh, we're waiting. Yeah, that's good.
And I'm stressed.
Oh, and you should be. Yeah.
I think by 15, I'm sure y'all have given your child hands-on instructions about, what to do, what not to do on the interwebs, and
of course,
hopefully they listen. But
of course, but it, like I said, it's helicopter parenting. At 15, I had no curfew. I was, I was just out. Like the idea that my 15-year-old would be living like that.
Yeah, it's like no.
Yeah,
I didn't have a bedtime. I remember I was up. Again, this is going to be dating myself, but it was like 7, 8, 9, 10. I was up watching the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and then going to school the next day. I was like, there's no real, she made sure I was fed and clothed, but I had a TV. But
that was basically it. That's all I'm saying. Like
that was the standard for boomer parents for their Gen X children. Like, are my children fed and clothed? Cool. Everything else is up to them, no matter how old they are.
Get out there and make it.
I remember my first big purchase after I got my first this was my second real purchase. My first purchase was like a La Tigra shirt because I was trying to be cool. But I couldn't afford the Izod yet. Again, dating myself. But so I was so proud to go buy a VCR because I was getting it for my mom's. And so I went downtown Brooklyn to get a VCR. And why I got took, like this dude was standing outside the store. And he was like, yo, are you coming to buy? Yeah, I work here. I'm just out here. Like, yo, I can get you one for cheap, blah, blah, blah. He did the whole game on me, the whole game. I was like, 17. I went home, the box was like rattling, but still I was so proud. I was like, and I went home, I was like, yo, this shit was like broken in 2. I was so mad. Yeah, no, it was pitiful. I was so, yeah. I tried to do it for my mom. So
Tried, yeah. Well,
tried.
that's a shame.
See, I think those are those very unique urban growing up experience, and then partial to New York, right? Like I feel like New York kids have to get their street smarts up very quickly, like at a very young age, because the streets is out here to, if not to straight up harm them, at least to get them for they
definitely take
little
advantage.
coins. Yeah, take advantage.
Oh yeah. No, I was like a 95-pound, skinny, bushy beard, innocent looking face kid. It was like Target all over me at this. I'm gonna get that kid. I'm gonna watch me get that dude's money. I was like,
he real light skinned. We about to get his ass.
And look at that big grin he got on his face, thinking he's gonna bring his mother home something. Look at that big grin. He definitely has a pocket full of money. Oh man, that's rough, man. But that's anyway. But that's the thing. Like we just started caring about our children, a couple decades ago as a human race, and
Sir, my father used to send me into the liquor store to buy him cigarettes and liquor.
Yeah,
and they'd be like, "Girl, where's your parent?" I'm like, he's out there in the parking lot.
He chilling.
Yeah,
and I'm like, see, my daddy right there. And then daddy's in the car waving, and I'm like, can I have the pack of Cool Milds, please? can I have the cigarettes from the father?
Yeah, no.
Can you imagine sending your kid into the liquor store to get anything out the liquor store besides a soda?
No,
nothing in a liquor store.
I wouldn't send them into a liquor store. Period. Like that's how I'm carrying it. Like I wouldn't even. It's so crazy how different I am raising my children, and it's not to say that I had no parental love or whatever, but it just was not the level of it was very much go over there and do that. Like cross several streets and go to the store. Like, you know what I mean? Like what's the issue? Like, and I'll see you when the lights come off,
Don't you think that made us very resilient? I would say as a generation, don't you think the kids today are soft, they scared, they don't even want to learn how to drive, they don't want to do shit. Like, it was sink or swim for Gen X. Like, hey, what y'all gonna do? You know what I'm saying?
We definitely may have overcorrected. We may have overcorrected.
Like I was going to school by myself, like 5 and 6 years old. Like for like you said, crossing streets 4 blocks up to the neighborhood elementary school. I can't imagine sitting a 5-year-old outside like to go cross some streets. It's like what was crazy.
No, I was taking the public bus to elementary school, not even a school bus. I was taking a public bus. Like go get the bus will be there. Go get on it. Yeah. Like don't miss it. Like it was like, and now we literally like our children. First of all, our kids get made fun of because they're the last to get the phone. Their friends always see one of their parents hanging around, and it's like even at the bus stop this morning, like we have a whole routine. Like there's no just go to the bus stop. And and we live in every bit of the tree-lined streets, so it's like but it's still like
but also Jared, don't you think that's a function of your children being raised in a 2-parent household, right? That single parents living is a lot different, right? Like
no question, absolutely. And also we have certain privileged jobs with flexible schedules, so certainly when my mother was doing it, she was working multiple jobs by herself. And so some of it was, I can't be there even if I wanted to, so you have a key and there's the bus and, there's some milk and cereal, make it home. And it's like, make it out there and make it home. Yeah. And if you do, there'll be some dinner and you might, and a hug and we can watch the Cosby Show. Yeah.
Go to the store. Mama, it ain't enough. We'll make it enough.
Make it enough.
And these kids missed out. They don't know what the funny money is. We had the funny money back in the day. You know what I'm saying?
And scamming the change, all of that.
I would sell books. I was so like, you get like a pack, I think it was like $70 or $80 of food stamps. And then, it was brown and purple and green. And then I think they wanted to make you feel bad for being poor. So they put the worst presidents on there, like Hoover or some shit like that. Like whoever the failed presidents were like all over the food stamps.
Failed presidents.
The failed presidents. You know what I'm saying? He caused the Great Depression. And it was all on the food stamps. And shit. But you would sell that for cash. Or like you sell a book of like $70-something, $80 of food stamps. You sell it for like $50, real cash and shit like that. So So, but people don't get that, just like that, that hustle.
They're missing out.
Experience. You got to get this, you got to get that. And you're right. Like 6 years old, 7 years old, you go into the store for your parents, down the block, up, across the street. And it was like, and you better come back with the right thing. Because if you don't, they're going to send you right back to the store.
Back out there. Yes, sir.
Yep. Hey, speaking of being in the right place at the right time, it looks like the ear doctor is he in the movie? Did he sneak into the movie theater?
You know it.
Is it bland?
Hey, that's another thing we used to do as kids, is sneak in the movie.
Oh, no doubt.
My pops used to send me to the store with a note for the lottery numbers and some Marlboros.
He sent you a note. He sent you to the liquor store with a note. And
well, it was the corner store.
And someone read the note and was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Let me get this some cigarettes and some liquor real quick."
Because he knew he would screw up the numbers otherwise. He wouldn't combinate
that
right.
Was smart.
And he would get his ass in trouble.
That was smart.
Pops
write it down, get it right.
That's right. Get your ass beat.
And when some of us worked at the movie theater, that was like the highlight of my social life. Because I was more the only time I was popular was when I could get cats in for free. And all of a sudden, Jared was the kid
Jared
to know.
Was the man.
Just briefly,
Man, y'all remember the dollar matinees? That was in 2000s.
It used to be. I mean, you could get there early and pay a cheaper fee, and you used to actually be able to afford a movie. Now, like, we don't go to movies, and we are a 2-parent household. We don't take these kids to no movie no more. It's $100.
That's $100,
right? Real. Y'all better Netflix and chill the fuck out.
Right, you know what I'm saying?
Hey, yo, speaking of, I'm in the movie theater because I wanted to talk about 5 of my top 5 hip hop movies.
Hey,
and we're gonna go to the comment section and talk about it when I get back. So let's go there.
Already I'm suspicious.
Let's go. Woo!
Remix
hip hop.
Yo, what's good, everybody out there? How y'all doing on this beautiful Wednesday? This is Black Power Media. This is the Remix Morning Show, and I am the Ear Doctor, and I'm in here chilling. Got my elderberry tea, getting ready for this fall season and all that. Almost winter, damn near. But I want to make sure y'all like and subscribe this channel here. Hit that like button at the bottom. Subscribe and come back so we can let y'all know about all the shows that's popping off right here. Go to Patreon and drop some change in the bucket. With that said, now, I want to talk about some of my top 5 hip-hop movies. And when I talk top 5 hip-hop movies, I mean these top 5 are the ones that take you back to the elements of hip-hop. Now, you got other hip-hop movies that was like documentaries and stuff like that. But we're going to start with my number 1 movie, which was Crush Groove. Crush Groove came out in 1985, and it was pretty much the story of Def Jam, how Def Jam came up. Russell Simmons with Run DMC, Fat Boy, Sheila E., Curtis Blow. I mean, you had even New Edition was in the movie. It was a dope movie of how they made it in the record business. Crush Groove. Please make sure y'all check that out. Now, my number 2 is no other than Beat Street. That's right, Beat Street, the king of the street. Say the rockin' that beat all across the street. Yeah, that's right. Beat Street was another movie that shows you all the elements of hip hop when it came to graffiti, break dancing, MCing, DJing. It had all the elements, and it had a love story in it too. So it was a very good movie. Check out Beat Street. Next, we have a movie that takes you back, which is Wild Style. That's right, Wild Style. Oh, Beat Street came out in 1984. Wild Style came out in 1983. Now, Wild Style was pretty much a movie about 5'5" Freddy, pretty much taking hip hop from the Bronx down to Manhattan and popularizing it with old girl Debbie Blondie. Yeah. So Debbie Harry. So it was a whole movie about that, which was good because it showed the different parts of it, and it had a big MC battle at the end of the movie. So that was real dope too. Next, I am going to go to House Party. That's right. What other movie do you get to see a MC battle, a dance battle, a kid getting messed with by the cops, a love story, projects and suburbs. I mean, this movie had it all when it came to hip hop. And my last movie, number 5, is going to be Breaking. Yes, I'm going to say Breaking just because it was old school. It was one of the first movies we seen hip hop in, and we seen how they mixed hip hop and ballet dancing and all that, and how it got once again popularized. But yeah, those movies was cool. But I have to say, if you ever want to really get a good history of it, check out this movie right here on Netflix, The Get Down. This movie really, it was a series. This one really gave you a nice amount of education on hip hop. And if you want to get a real, next time we're going to get to documentaries. My number 1 top documentary in hip hop is Hip Hop Evolution. This definitely gave you the rundown. So these are my tops. So check them out. That's right here, the Remix Morning Show. Now let's get back to our host. Yeah.
Very respectable list there, Ear Doctor. Respectable.
Thank you.
So
Omissions? Who left out something? Is there anything that y'all would have added to Ear Doctor's list?
The problem, I unfortunately had a brief little issue over here and missed the last 2 entries. So what were the final 2?
The last 4 was House Party and The Get Down. The House Party and Breaking, which came out in 1984.
So I'm not tripping. You did not have Style Wars on here.
No, I did.
You did not have the sequel,
Rapping John Hood.
No. Style Wars and oh man, somebody in the chat help me out. How could you not have that? The one that was immortalized in the classic.
Oh yeah, the one that you can't even remember.
No, the film. That's my memory. That's not that you can't pin all of this to my memory and ability to recall in the moment. That's not fair. Style Wars and Wild Style.
I got Wild Style. I got Wild Style.
Okay.
It was Crest Groove, Beat Street, Wild Style, House Party, and Breaking.
Okay. That is a respectable list. I might have had something for Style Wars.
You gotta have Crush Groove on there. That's a classic.
You gotta have Crush Groove on there.
Yeah,
oh, definitely.
House Party is, a personal,
Yeah.
I mean, House Party had everything in it. It related to us, especially so much in our generation. I mean,
But the real omission, Ear Doctor, is 8 Mile. I don't know how you could not have...
Jared. I thought I was crazy. I was gonna say 8 Mile also.
Now see that goes into a whole other category.
I think 8 Mile deserves consideration.
It does. It doesn't. It does. 8 Mile, you got Notorious.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. And the only reason y'all saying it doesn't is because that wasn't y'all's era. That mid-90s era, that Mob Deep, that Wu-Tang, like that wasn't y'all. Y'all niggas was Wild Style and breaking
Wu-Tang was my era too. Don't be taking Wu away from me. You can have
the only thing 8 Mile got right is when they were in the car listening to Mob Deep. That's the only thing they got right.
Come on, man. The battles.
Thank you. The battle.
Come on now, battling.
Are you serious?
Battling started before they was making records. Now go back to Roxanne Shante.
We don't get too many glimpses of Detroit from that perspective in that era in too many movies, right? And even though Eminem, obviously the main character, white, everybody else in the goddamn movie was black except his mama and his girlfriend.
Right.
So I mean, to me, that was very much a hip hop culture movie. I was waiting for all the tomatoes to be thrown when someone said 8 Mile. Shout out to Ricky Ryan. Ricky Ryan also said brown sugar, not over brown sugar, honey. In addition, in conjunction with, we can definitely
brown sugar is that's a great shout, and that is a legit hip hop movie, unlike 8 Mile.
Yeah, now see,
I didn't like the Get Down.
I don't even think I saw the Get Down.
Y'all bugging. Y'all gotta watch the Get Down, man. That was a great. See, fix your face. Fix, like your
Who is
mom
this
said, fix your
now?
face.
And see, also, ear doctor, when you said originally when you introduced the category, these are my favorite hip hop movies. My mind automatically went to soundtracks, right? So I'm thinking like Juice soundtrack. I'm thinking like all these
Belly.
great movies, Belly, whatever. But they
Belly.
wasn't necessarily hip hop movies. they was hip hop was like a silent character
Exactly.
on the cast. But yes.
See,
Yes.
it's categories to this stuff, man. I'm gonna let y'all get to the news. I'll catch y'all next break. Peace.
Thanks, here, doctor. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that was good. I got my brain working
I
a
did
little
see the
bit
Get
here.
Down. I didn't like it though. I started watching. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I
forgot
wasn't
what was looking
pleased.
at.
I wasn't as pleased as I
Anyway.
thought I was going to be.
What about that
But-
Wu-Tang documentary on Showtime?
I
This is
saw
gonna
the
make
first
me
one.
actually get Hulu so I can watch this Wu-Tang
I
documentary.
watched the
Hulu
first
now.
Hulu. I watched the series. I saw the documentary. The Hulu is a series, which was very good. I know season 2 is out, and I haven't started that yet. But
I already
first
watched season 2.
I thought
Season
was
2
really
is a
good.
bomb too. Season 2 is
Okay.
good. Yeah,
All right,
I got
right
into
on.
it
I had
late,
to-
but when I heard season 2 came out, I jumped on that early. It was really, I like the Wu-Tang series is worth watching. They do it, going through what RZA did to produce or whatever, and they still at the part where they about to break into stardom. So I think they're doing a really good job of like showcasing it. So yeah.
So, quick question for you, Kamal, since you've seen it: did they talk about when the RZA's basement flooded and he lost all, like, basically the whole Into the 36 Chambers, like the whole? They had to redo the whole first album again because
No, they didn't cover
lost
that
so much
part.
to a flood. Oh, okay.
No, they didn't do that. They just
Maybe that's
made
an
it.
urban legend. maybe
Oh.
that's not even a real thing. Maybe that's something
No, it
that
could be. It could
was out
be. They more were dealing with like the making of the music.
Mhm.
The cats like they may about to be big stars, but they haven't gotten their money yet. So some cats about to turn back to the street and sell and do some other things to make that money. It's about it. Part, and again, I'm with them, but part of it is kind of like these cats were like just on the verge of like superstardom or being pulled back into the streets. They talked about a little bit around the making of Cream, and a couple other pieces which are really just good visually speaking. They do some great editing and cuts, and again going into the mind of RZA around how he makes his music and all that kind of shit. So it was really deep.
I'm interested. Yes.
Yeah, I got to get to the season 2 because the first one was good. I enjoyed it.
I had a conversation once, y'all, with Ninth Wonder, the producer, and we both. He said this out his mouth. He was like, "Wu-Tang is our Parliament Funkadelic." You understand? Like, we're gonna be 80 years old talking about bring the motherfucking rockets. Like, and I'm like, yes, I've already instructed in my what's the word? What's the document you leave when you want niggas to take care of you?
My
Directive, no, my advanced directive.
Oh,
nigga, if I have to be put in nursing homes, please play nothing but Wu-Tang, Redman, and Outkast for this old lady because it will make me happy.
They should do that. I want to see a Redman thing,
infuse that drip, baby. Infuse
right.
that drip. You know what I'm saying? I've
Already.
already got that in my instructions too. Infuse that drip.
Listen.
Whatever gets plugged into me, infuse.
Show day. I need to put this down too. Like, listen, if I come up with a terminal illness, I'm on heroin the next day. Okay.
Oh, no question. Oh, no question. Oh, no question. When I had some years ago, and I had one of my major back go outs, and they took me to the VA hospital. Whatever that cocktail was, that's what I've instructed. I said, put me on that. That's how I'm going out this joint right here.
Nigga,
Sailing off like that.
Give me that Michael Jackson show.
They gave me I had to, they give you a cracker. You had to eat something. They give you a saltine. I had the crumbs was all over. I was so happy. Just the crumbs. And I couldn't have been happy. that's how when it's just crumbs, you just like, yes, it don't matter. I was like, yeah, this is it right here.
Speaking of which, you made me start watching the other Hulu thing, the
Dope Sick.
Yeah, because of you, I started watching that. It was really good so far.
What is that? What is that?
It's Dope Sick is a series on Hulu about the rise of the propaganda that developed the rise or pushed the rise of OxyContin. And they show, oh man, this thing is really well done. And Michael Keaton, who I've always liked, does a really good job acting in this. But it's very good. So you get, the investigation side, you get the medical side, you get the PR side, you get the business side, and it's crazy. and I get it. I wasn't given oxy particularly, but I remember I got morphine, Valium, and Dilaudid was the 3 in my cocktail that I remember. And if oxy does something akin to that, I fully understand the addiction, because I went from the kind of pain where you consider suicide to extreme comfort and peace almost instantly. I'm like, if that's what's working out here, I was like, woo, and put that in my directive.
Because when I first because this addiction crisis, unlike crack, never wasn't like in our community kind of shit as much or whatever. Like obviously it's making its way. So from afar, you do go into the mindset of like whether a radical revolutionary as it creeps up on you is like people need to control their addictions, or like what's going on, like why is people getting addicted to this shit, like but when and I agree they do such a good job in a movie that you get to see the corporate facilitation of it behind it, that it just reminds you, it's like, oh, that's right, it's not even, I think people like all of a sudden discovered this shit was like pushed, harnessed, introduced as the wonder drug around pain. The doctors were giving it away like it was candy. The pharmacists were giving it away like it was candy. It's like everybody was making money off of that shit. And then it starts to come back to you. It's like, yes, this is how the addiction happened. It's just not some simple, I'm just going to start picking up some drug. People, it's like all like, propaganda or advertising. It creates its market. And they very much even say it in the series about how they're creating a market around stopping pain and all that kind of stuff. And then the sort of highfalutin attitude of the business folks, right, who never really want to talk about how much money they make. They talk about it, but it's really kind of like they're in pursuit of some goodness for humankind, which is their driver, when the real driver is like billions and billions of dollars, right?
Here's my question. I'm wondering if the dope sick, because now I'm interested. Apparently, I have to get Hulu now because Hulu has some decent programming. But I wonder if they'll get into the fact that they were pretty much exclusively pushing these opiates on white people. Like Black people were not being prescribed these same opiates because, medical community thinks that niggas don't feel pain. So Black folks were, having to do the heroin while white people was getting Oxycontin prescribed easily.
They don't make it, it's not explicitly put so far in that way, but it's clearly the focus is that it's like minors and poor white workers who were primarily targeted because they have all the pain.
You mean
specifically
like underage
minors,
people or people who work?
No, I'm sorry, like the underground workers in the coal miners in West Virginia, coal miners. Sorry.
Got it.
Sorry about that. And but they were the target, and the small town doctors and stuff like that who were very intimately connected to their community. They were the conduits through which these big pharma reps worked to push these drugs. And I get it. And then they argued, it was brilliant. I mean, they argued there was a time release in the drug that prevents it from becoming addicted because you don't get that high impact hit, that just the pain just quietly goes away over time. And obviously it doesn't work. And then they were showing, and I'll say this much, what they show is that it was marketing that replaced morphine with oxy. Part of the claim being oxy does what morphine does without the addiction, when in fact that's not the case. And to this day, oxy is still being used more, or at least as much, if not more than morphine, because of the labeling, because morphine has that negative branding of being associated with heroin or greater addiction, where oxy has this branding PR campaign that's very different. And they're showing some of the background of that, and it is, I mean, it's crazy.
And you see, quickly, and the role of the government and the FDA. I left that part out. Like just talking about the role of the government in creating a special label for them. The person who approves it, then like leaving the FDA job, going to work for the larger corporations, and vice versa. So all that kind of stuff gets in there. So yeah, so far I agree. It's a good tale of like the and obviously they would do it for them, right? So, but it's a good tale of like how people suffer at the bottom, how even the doctors, are sort of ambiguously heroes, but also suffer and all that kind of stuff. But it's a well-made tale about white addiction.
Mhm.
It's also, for a country trying to vaccinate its citizens, it's not a good look on the timing, because if anybody needs further reason to not trust the advertising, the government, the FDA, the claimed benefits of a drug, this is it. So I mean, it's just a whole. So I get the skepticism. I understand why there's so many skeptical of the process here in this country, and this series doesn't help. So anyway, so you see the struggle, but you see the struggle between science and people trying to do good work, and business, and people who don't care about any of it. And all within a white context. Yeah. So to your point, they haven't even gotten to any overt discussion of race yet. It's just, they don't get that money. And if white workers or whoever has to become addicted and strung out. And then even it's something that I experienced back in the day, where you get these pills, and they were showing in the series, you crush them up and snort them. Then it becomes, a whole new experience. So anyway, look, we didn't even get to it yet. Why don't we quickly spin the globe and then get to some of these news stories before we come back over here, Doc? May is vicious with that transition game. Nice with it. Hey, so Kim, listen, I know you had something you wanted to get to this morning that I admit I know nothing or little about, but I'm very interested in topic wise. So what you got?
All right, kids, go and gather around here to Auntie's feet. We're gonna talk about baseball, y'all. And I know niggas is like, baseball. Yes, baseball. The shit that your grandmama and granddaddy used to sit around in the house listening to on the radio, if you are of a certain age like I am. And this World Series is a big one for Black people, very specific Black person by the name of Dusty Baker. He is the manager of the Houston Astros. Now, guys, Dusty Baker is a MLB OG. To put it mildly, okay? So this is Dusty Baker's 5th team that he's managed, right? This is the 2nd team that he's taken to the World Series. And gang, if we have any more sports experts in the chat and I say something incorrect, please correct me. So Dusty Baker has, in less than 2 years, managed the Houston Astros back to the World Series. Dusty Baker was brought in to manage the Houston Astros after their horrendous cheating scandal that I believe happened in 2017, 2018. The year, I think, that they won the World Series, and the year that they lost the World Series to my Washington Nationals in 2019. And them niggas was cheating, and the Nats still beat them niggas. So let me just throw that in there for GP, just so y'all know how good that National squad was in 2019. And Dusty Baker, by the way, also used to manage the Nationals for 2 years, and then he left. He was actually let go. But nonetheless, Dusty Baker is one of Major League Baseball's most revered hallowed figures, and he still does not get, to my opinion, the amount of respect that he actually deserves for his management acumen and for his baseball acumen total. So let me just give y'all some perspective. Dusty Baker is 70 years old, okay? Dusty Baker was drafted by the Atlanta baseball team back in 1967. In 1971, Dusty Baker was standing on deck when Hammerin' Hank Aaron smashed number 715, breaking Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. So you can just imagine what that must have been like for Dusty Baker, standing on the field watching Hank Aaron break, a Black man, by the way, break this record. Despite all of the racism and threats and all kinds of crazy shit that was aimed at Hank Aaron as he was chasing Babe. So Dusty Baker, again, for one, hold on, let me back up again. Dusty Baker has already won a World Series as a player. He won, I believe, with the 1981 Dodgers. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. He won as a player. And ever since he retired from baseball as a player, he's been managing for 22 years. This is his fifth team. This is his second time getting a team to the World Series. And for reasons I don't understand, like, baseball greats will talk very glowingly about Tony La Russa and Joe Torre. Put some respect on Dusty Baker's name out here, y'all. Dusty Baker is an OG. Dusty Baker is a winner. And for reasons, again, I think it's just because of race, but Dusty Baker, he doesn't get those long-term managerial contracts. Like, Dusty don't get them big money contracts. And I don't understand why. Like, he has proven that he can manage ball clubs. He can manage young talent. He can manage veteran talent. Anyway, we are rooting for Dusty Baker. Think whatever you want about the Houston Astros. We are rooting for Dusty Baker to win this World Series as a manager because he deserves it. And call your grandma and grandpa and tell them that you are paying attention to this World Series for no other reason than Dusty Baker. And also, as a caveat about this World Series, we know it is Houston versus Atlanta. And y'all, don't forget that the Atlanta Major League Baseball franchise name and the mascot, and more importantly, the very racist tomahawk chop that Atlanta fans do, is racist as fuck against our indigenous brothers and sisters. Please don't think just because the name is Braves that is somehow less offensive than the Washington R-word racial slur of the football franchise here in DC. So that's it. That's all I had to say.
Right on.
That should have been like in the commentary section. She's like, respect on Dusty Baker's name. I remember seeing Dusty Baker play. I've probably seen that World Series. He was an active player or whatever like that. So yeah, he does have a long, great history. I didn't even realize until 2 days ago that the Braves are in the World Series, and I live in Atlanta, so that's been a long time since I stopped watching baseball. But
in your own city,
all praises due. All praises due. Say
They're
again.
not talking about Atlanta in the World Series in Atlanta. Is that what you're?
Oh, I'm sure Atlanta.
I'm sure. I'm just ignoring it.
Oh, okay.
Like it ain't the Mets.
But I'm with you on the name, and I honestly, I'm also with Kamau on the inattention to what's going on. I had no idea the World Series was going on. I didn't know who was in it.
I treat it like soccer.
I did. Now that is blasphemy. That's blasphemy because there's a whole exciting universe happening over there. But anyway, but Kim, your point about the name though. And I'm not really clear on part of the inattention for me would be not being clear on how they've escaped the name thing. And I believe so have the Cleveland Indians. They're still rocking with all of that. I think all they did recently was, did they change the name? Or because I thought they changed the logo. They changed the name too?
I think so. Yes, they did change the name and the logo. I don't think they're going to be the Indian. It's a goofy name change, by the way. Like it's okay. Not a very memorable one, obviously, because I can't recall what it is. But they did change the name, so I think going in the next season, because they did remove the Chief Wahoo, which was horribly offensive.
Oh, Guardians, is that what it is? The Guardians, Cleveland.
That's exactly.
No, that's a roller derby team. Baseball team. I don't know what they're doing, but you might be right about that. But anyway, I was confused how because I'm at least aware that the Washington football team, which continues to lose, which I find to be hilarious,
in many ways,
and by the way, which is still part of that. It's still that ongoing investigation into them that led to the Gruden stuff, right? So we should still be getting more about Dan Snyder and his whole crew. But since they've had to change their name or all this other stuff is going on, I have been a little shocked that the Braves have gotten away with and especially now that they're on the World Series stage. Yeah. I might have thought it would come up again, but I don't know.
And I was going to say with the Astros, that part their cheating scandal was like stealing signals,
signs.
Right? Yeah. They're stealing signs.
And beating on the track on the garbage cans in order to delineate something was happening.
What do they say? If you're not cheating, you're not trying. You know what I'm saying? And
particularly in baseball.
I mean, they were just getting their Bill Belichick on. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I mean? So you can't be mad
But you
at
understand though. But see, that's the shit that makes me mad though. I mean, it was almost like the Houston Astros. Excuse my language. But they shit the bed a la like a George W. Bush, and then they asked the Negro to come in and clean it up.
Clean it up.
What I mean? And it's like y'all not even giving Dusty Top Dollar out here to come and clean this up and to bring you back to World Series. So please, you know what I mean? Like more than respect. Tell Houston to pay this man or the next ball club that picks him up as a manager, give him big, long money. Like, stop fucking around. Like, what more does Dusty Baker have to do out here? You know what I mean? Like, anyway, so there's that. There is that. But no, I love baseball. Like, shout out to everyone who was forced to listen and or watch baseball games with your grandparents. My grandmother was very much into baseball. My grandmother lived in Little Rock, Arkansas. She listened to the Cardinals on the radio if they wasn't on the television. And she was just very much into baseball. So I know I'm part of that long multi-generational of Black American and not only Black American, but Black Latinos as well, who have been very much ingrained in baseball, who love the sport, and who want to see still more Black folks playing baseball. We got plenty of our Black Caribbean and Latinx brothers and sisters out there. I want to see more Black American kids play baseball instead of football. Why y'all got y'all kids playing football all the goddamn time? Don't y'all know baseball players make more money and less prone to injury and less prone to concussion? Put your kids in baseball out here, man.
I think
especially if you have a left-hander. I was waiting. I was looking at my children when they were born, and I was like, if boy or girl, if you got a left hand, you gonna get on that pitching diamond and make us some money. So but unfortunately, anyway, their genius is expressed in other ways.
Of course.
I used to be a big baseball fan back in the day too, like the Mets, like huge Met fan. Yo. And again, Darryl Strawberry, Mookie Williams, all 86 world champions.
That Coke ball, they was out there throwing.
I used to be in that argument all the time. Dwight Gooden is better than Roger Clemens. That used to be I was right there with that. And he might have been, but that cocaine is a hell of a drug, boy.
Darryl Strawberry was on coke. Roger Clemens was on whole ass steroids. I think there's a difference. Cocaine might be a performance enhancing drug, but I think there's still a big difference between coke and I would have actually no problem my pitcher going out there coked up as opposed to on the roids.
I forgot what's the name of the football player. He might have played for Washington for a while, and then he got traded to Miami, I think, running back, and then he got in trouble for smoking weed. It's like Ricky somebody.
Ricky Williams.
Yeah. So
I don't think he played for us, but
I was like, how can you punish a running back for being good and smoking weed? Like, that's not no performance enhancing drug. He's almost proving to you that you can just do whatever you want and smoke weed. That's how good he is.
Yes.
And then they threw him out the league for a little bit. Right. Suspended him. I was like, that makes no sense.
No sense.
Let me before we get to the ear doctor, speaking of those in need of performance enhancement, let me show you this real quick, because this is a segment that I saw on Jimmy Dore the other day about Kamal's favorite white man, and I think that and Kamal's favorite white man is struggling a little bit in his old age with his analysis and might need some performance enhancement help.
They're coming for my
They
man.
are coming
for
him. So,
back to Chomsky. In the early 60s, and I think this speaks to an aspect of Chomsky's psyche that isn't well understood. It's just a theory about him. In the early 60s, he was consulting for a nonprofit that was funded by the military called MITRE, MITRE. MITRE was founded by the U.S. Air Force and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, which is where Chomsky has always worked. He was the most brilliant linguist in the country, and he was brought in to help them use language learning to enhance command and control systems that would essentially deploy the Air Force's store of conventional and nuclear weapons. And MITRE went on to spend 1/4 of its time and budget consulting on the Vietnam War. This was after Chomsky had consulted for them. Chomsky even visited their offices in 1965. His name is on the documents about their language learning command and control systems that they were trying to develop for the Air Force. But Miter went on to be one of the key consultants for the US military in the Vietnam War and produced an electronic fence that was extremely costly, probably not very efficient, but was designed to help the US military target Viet Cong and North Vietnamese troops for destruction. By that point, Chomsky was becoming a critic of the Vietnam War, but this part of this sort of footnote in Chomsky's history, I don't know if he's ever addressed it, but it shows where he comes from. He comes from a technocratic background, and the technocracy has gained new power through the pandemic, and it seems that he's kind of gone full circle to identifying with these technocrats who he relates to and their view of the unvaccinated.
So I the broader context of welcome Kalanji is that they're raising questions about Chomsky's devolving analysis as he falls in line with promoting not only vaccine mandates but punishing those who are unvaccinated and saying that they are willfully trying to cause death and should be condemned and kept away from society and all this stuff. And so they're trying to understand why. Now, these are two, in terms of the vaccine, two pro-vaccine discussants in Max and Jimmy, but they're saying that while they support being vaccinated, they don't support all of the treatment of those who are unvaccinated, the maligning, the hostility, and in this case, Chomsky's coming on board with the technocratic elite who are saying we should punish those by separating them and castigating them. So I thought that little bit of his history was interesting, and for me answers some of the questions as to how he could maintain his career while also seemingly taking progressive positions, while also standing askance, if not fully away from political prisoners, so-called he doesn't get involved with that.
Chomsky has signed many statements and has talked about the issue of political prisoners. He's talked about in his books, he's written about, don't give me that look.
I don't see him, and I haven't heard him.
I got like 40 books back here. He's talked about the issue of the Panthers. He's talked about the issue of the Panthers. He's talked about the violence, particularly put on Black communities compared to white intellectuals who get to speak out about this kind of stuff.
Sure.
The reason Chomsky, he is the Einstein of linguist thinking. Y'all better take them smirks off your face. He is the Einstein of linguist thinking, and that's how he's protected his position. And he's tenured, so he gets to say what the fuck he wants to say. But I'm going to bring out some small iota of like 1963 to try to demonize a 90-year-old man.
No,
92. He's 92.
I'm giving you a snapshot. Hold on. I only gave you a snapshot of the conversation, and he's making a point that I think is legit about Chomsky's relationship and why he doesn't support voting left of the Democratic Party and why he's taken this pro-technocratic, pro-police state position re-vaccines.
First of all, Chomsky is not pro. What was that? Pro.
I said pro-police state position as it regards vaccines. I do think that. I mean, I think that.
I don't think he's pro. Well, I don't. I mean, obviously,
you got to see what he said, though. I didn't play the whole clip. You got to see what he said.
Can you fill us in? Because I'm not familiar with his comments about.
He's just simply saying people who don't get vaccinated should be labeled, removed from society, demonized as killing their fellow human being, which is not the science. The science doesn't support that, by the way. The vaccine doesn't prevent the spread. It doesn't. It just helps with.
So should white folks be labeled as killing human beings as well? I mean, since they have a track record in the history and they've committed more genocide and killed more folks than COVID or vaccinations and all that. Should that be the same case? I like Chomsky, but I don't think he should get to say what the fuck he want to say. I don't agree with that part. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think anyone could just.
I don't think they get to dig out 1960 some small thing. I mean, for him to try to make a case that's connected to somehow.
But that's not his case, Kamal. Let me be. You got to be fair to Max. Because, but my point is, I I played 3 minutes of like an hour-long conversation just for the sake of time. I was just trying to lay out that they had brought this point and they were making this argument about Chomsky that I think is a legit one. And I just wanted to, we didn't get into the whole thing. There's so much more that they say. That was just one point that is made to show the positioning that Chomsky has assumed, particularly at this late stage in his life. And they were really raising the question of how do you go from a progressive hero to someone who is working against your own analysis of the way news media works and disseminates information. That's really what they were saying. And I do think, to his credit, Max is a thorough researcher, even in the area of hip hop, more than people might realize, because he does dig in and he knows a lot about a lot of things, and his power of recall is pretty impressive. So I think
I'm still not impressed.
Okay, I understand.
I got a question.
I'm just saying, I don't know too many 90-somethings that continue to be radical or get more radical the older they get. Isn't it usually the more older you get, the more conservative you get? And from a straight white man, I expect nothing less than Noam Chomsky to probably grow a little bit more conservative in his views. And I'm assuming that his position on the vaccine is one of self-preservation. The nigga is 92. Okay, let's just be clear about that. So also, I think 92-year-olds should be able to say whatever the fuck they want. I intend on saying whatever the fuck I want if I make it to 92. So I'm less offended by Noam Chomsky's comments just because I'm putting them in the context of his age, and I don't have any idea what his state of mind is. So if niggas want to flip out about
my cocktail.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if cats want to be flipping out over what 92-year-old men are saying online, I think you need to find better things to do with your time.
Chomsky's a 90-something-year-old man online. But listen, I think
just real quick, Kanji, I'm sorry, real quick. Kim,
No
your point, I just want to be clear. All of your points are valid. I just want to be fair to that discussion. It's so much more wide-ranging and substantive than what we looked at. So I just want to be fair to them.
Okay.
But you all make,
I think Max just wants to be the new Chomsky, and he doesn't have the intellectual heft to accomplish that.
Wow.
Talk about
White on white crime. What's going on? I tapped in at the wrong time, man. What's going on here? But on the real, I mean, Kim, to your point, I don't think that they get softer or I forgot the word that you used.
More conservative.
Age. Conservative. I think it would depend on how they started out, because of the fact that most folks I know who are BLA or came out of the Malcolm tradition or Garveyites, they tend to get a little more harder because of the fact that they realize that the sands of time is going down or whatever.
Facts, but you're talking about black people though, honey. We're talking about an old white man.
I'm here for the Africans. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm right. Cool. I support all the allies and the comrades and all that, but I'm Africa first, so I got to deal with what I know. You know what I'm saying? But shout out to Chomsky for his works, but that shit that Jared just said sounds like some bullshit. I gotta tap into it and see what he's talking about. Yeah. No, I'm just saying what you said. Yeah. No, I'm saying what he said.
This being my last day on the remix, let me just say a couple of words. Don't be talking about Chomsky, B.
Don't be talking about no Chomsky out here for the cabal.
That's a good white man. That's a good white man.
I think Deruba and Chomsky should debate. That's my thought. How about that?
I love Deruba, but
Deruba versus Chomsky. Put it in the chat.
Deruba, Chomsky at this point.
Oh yeah,
I don't think at any point
back 20 years.
92-year-old Chomsky, I'm not quite sure, but
hey,
Chomsky's whole life is about reading books and shit like that. That's all that dude does, and writing.
Right, well, listen.
You know what? But before we break, we I don't know if we said this beforehand or we're gonna have a segment about it, but just want to say, big shout out to David Gilbert. Right, getting out on parole.
We didn't get to. We missed so much of the news.
Yeah.
We had all that lined up. All of that.
Okay.
You're right.
We might come back to it again, but just want to make sure we mention it on today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Russell Maroon Schultz, David Gilbert, both political prisoners. Now going to be former political prisoners. Unfortunately, Russell Maroon Schultz is going to be sent to hospice because he has serious health issues, and hopefully there could be some recovery. But at least he'll be officially outside the wall. His family be able to be with him and see him. And David Gilbert yesterday made parole, anti-imperialist freedom fighter, supporter of Chesimard, as we say, was in it to win it, upheld his politics, just like Chomsky, And he is also going to be paroled and be with his family soon. So shout out to
Marion
both.
Robinson, pigs indicted in that
Chomsky
case.
is no David Gilbert. So let's get
We
that clear.
agree on that.
Wait.
Definitely not.
Action speaks louder
Yeah.
than words, and we agree with that.
Let's agree on that. All right, there we
Okay.
go. Let's end on that agreement. And let's look. I'm very happy to get to our next guest, a very special guest coming up here to talk, a longtime friend, and to talk about some important work, especially given an issue I'm about to deal with my own public school situation over here. We got to get into some homeschooling and see what's what about that. Let's get into some of that discussion right here, the Remix Morning Show, Black Power Media. All right, what's up, world? Welcome back again to the Remix Morning Show here in Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to in this segment play host to our next guest, a very special guest, an old friend of mine, Dr. Khadijah Ali Coleman, who, among many other things, is a writer, scholar, performing artist, and co-founder of Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars, and who is here to talk with us about that work and some new work and some other things. So, Dr. Coleman, Ali Coleman, welcome. It's good to see you again. Welcome. Good morning.
It is so good to see you. We go way back. We go
way back. And you have done big things.
Let me tell you something. You probably don't realize that when I used to do the news, when you were on a DC radio station, independent radio station, right? I was
WPFW.
homeschooling.
We give them shout outs all the time.
Good.
WPFW 89.3 FM. Shout out to Katia Stitt and all the good people over there. Absolutely. Yes,
right. Because
yes,
you never know. So I've done.
You never know. Right. Radio rules. Sometimes we bring radio rules into the YouTube, but yeah, it's all good over here. Yeah.
Well, when I was at WPFW, and that was over 13 or 14 years ago, I was homeschooling then. And so I was bringing my daughter with me to the station when I was doing the news with Askia Muhammad before your show. So I just think that this is just so kismet and synchronicity at work that now we're talking about, this right now, because when all the time that I've known you, off and on, I've been homeschooling my daughter.
Wow. And shout out to Askia Muhammad too, by the way, raising his name up. But and my brother Jamil, who does radio with him now in the morning, anyway, but now that you say so all those years I was and am still dealing with the personal contradiction that I admittedly struggle with internally a great deal with the schooling of our children. Yeah. Most of which has occurred in the public school system. Mm-hmm. And I am not, I just wanted just a quick disclaimer to all those who might see this. I am not inviting critique or commentary on that, on my personal situation. I'm just sharing that to say that it is a contradiction for me. Mm-hmm. And homeschooling was something that I remember we looked into, and our situation at the time didn't present an alternative or an option that worked for us. But it's something that I've been very much interested in learning more about, or just following. And so on the one hand, I want to ask you. So my first real question was, what is the relationship between the Black tradition of homeschooling and the Black independence school tradition? And is there? Could we start with a little bit of that, and then tell us about your work and why homeschooling you think is so important?
Well, that's an awesome question. And just to let me wrap my mind around it and to be transparent, I actually attended a Pan-African independent school in Washington, D.C., Nation House Watoto Shule, back in the 80s, very early when it started, and very briefly. But my parents, my mother in particular, had she's passed, but she had a very Pan-African mindset. And so that was my early experience. I became familiar with homeschooling when she began homeschooling my brother, who's 11 years younger than me. So I was an adult, and he was either middle school or early high school. And so that being even a possibility and entering my consciousness for me, I would say that was maybe the 90s. And so when I decided to become a researcher and to look particularly at African American homeschool dual enrolled students through my doctoral program at Morgan State University, with emphasis on community college leadership, I was expected and had to, for my literature review, really look at the history of homeschooling in particular, to Black families. And what I found is that the literature, there's really, it's absent of looking at homeschooling from the perspective, from a historical framework, right? But also from looking at the voices, hearing the voices of Black homeschooling, homeschooled children, those who were formerly homeschooled, currently in the world of work, or entrepreneurs, college, what have you. And so it's really this deficit of literature in the research world. And so a lot of my research had to come from those who hadn't been interviewed by the news, or hadn't written books, or hadn't been part of a study, to really find out what is this homeschooling culture in reference to Black people, right? And so a lot of the anecdotal stories that I came across is that, for the most part, it's been considered fringe. And when you think of homeschooling, is usually synonymous with, white, cultish, conservative families. But it really came about, popularized during the rise of these independent Black schools that we know really came about late 60s, 70s, late 70s. And a lot of these parents did not want to have attention brought to their practice, for fear that there would be some type of retribution or something to stop them from being able to homeschool and to school their children at home. And so you saw maybe in the early 90s, folks starting to write about it. One really prominent Black homeschooler, Paula Penn Nabrett, has a book out. The name escapes me, but you can, if for those folks listening, can Google her name. And actually, my colleague, Dr. Cheryl Field Smith, who is the co-founder of Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars with Me, recently interviewed her. And so the interview with her is on our podcast, Contemporary Perspectives on Black Homeschooling. But what she talks about is that when she chose to homeschool, it wasn't really this community that exists now. And it was really it was about survival and being confronted with so many deficiencies and overt racism in the public school system, that homeschooling was really it wasn't something they set out to do. It was something they had to do. And she talks about how her children didn't want to be, now we have these communities of homeschooling. The children seem so gleefully joyful to be outside of these traditional school settings. But she was saying at the time, her kids didn't want to be homeschooled. And she puts that in her book. They weren't like, yeah, mama, homeschool me. But she and her husband knew that this was something they had to do, because she was witnessing the destruction of the attempt to destroy her children's love of learning. And she talked about in this interview with Cheryl about it's this system of white supremacy, but it's also what she coined, and I love this in the interview, she coined the colored I think it was colored conspirators or something similar to that. But understanding that in our school system, a lot of us who are choosing to homeschool, it's this system, and it can be brought on with someone with a brown or white face. It's really not nowadays. And I can say it with my own story. My daughter, I knew fourth grade, because she had been in and out of the school system. Because for me, it was, do I like this school? If not, she's coming home and I'm going to teach her. But fourth grade, this teacher asked for me to come in, and she wanted to talk with me. And she was telling me that I had to have a conversation with my daughter, because she would finish her work before everyone else. And then she would pull out a journal and start writing. And she felt that this was a disruption to the other children, because they wanted to write as well. And it was that moment where I said, this is the dumbest SHIT that I have ever heard in my life. and this is not what I want for my daughter. And so, you know, and when you talk to parents, there are those kinds of stories where it's this, if it's not naturally intuitive, they're the red flags that they can recount, you know, off the top of their head, where it was that moment that they knew that this was not the space for their children.
So you sort of touched on it already, but one of the things I wanted to ask also, you know, about the negative stereotypes associated with homeschooling, and then I'm very happy to have you explode those myths, particularly as they pertain to Black children.
Yes.
But you know, some of them that we hear, you know, how, first of all, you know, how can we do it? You know, how do we homeschool when we have to work, or we, you know, we can't afford it, or you know, how do we, you know, or the kids don't get the quality education that they would get in an actual school, or what about their ability to become quote unquote successful in this society? What, yeah, and maybe if there are other prominent myths that you all have to deal with on a regular basis, you could bring them up and you know, as Bob Brown says, shotgun them.
That's right.
Shotgun those ideas and those myths. But you know, yeah.
Well, I would tell you, on this whole, you know, I call it the speaking junket, right? So, because homeschooling is real popular now because of COVID, right? And let's be real. And it's so funny because when I was doing in my program, you know, my advisors and folks were like, "This woman is tripping." Folks already think I'm crazy. So, like, what in the hell is she talking about homeschooling? And I literally had to defend my dissertation when the week that quarantine began last year, right? And so then
you started off by saying, "I told you."
Right.
Was that your first line? Hi, everybody. Good morning. I told you.
Well,
because that's how I started my defense, by the way.
But you know, the thing is that I didn't have time to say I told you because I was so busy creating these communities, right? But the thing that really boggles my mind, this first myth that I want to dispel, is that for many, they didn't even know that Black people homeschooled until COVID-19, right? When the school started tripping and they're like, oh, hell no. Because for many parents, what they started to realize was this dynamic between their children and the teachers because of virtual learning. And so when the classroom now was in on the computer screen, and the parents could hear how teachers were talking to their children, for many, they were like, oh no, this will not go, right? So that's the first myth, is that Black people have been homeschooling for decades, right? It's not new. I mentioned that before, and I encourage people to really understand that, because for those who are homeschooling because of COVID-19, they are believing that they are creating a new culture when there is a culture that exists. And I will tell you that many are trying to, because it's now an ecosystem that exists for homeschooling, because so many Black people have begun to homeschool. The U.S. Census released a recent study at the top of this year, looking at 2020, and saying that homeschooling among Black families has now jumped to 16%. And that's a 500% increase when we realize that the data that we had said that Black families were really only 3 to 5% of homeschooling families. And I can say that when I conducted my study in 2019, that's really what the data said. And that's kind of sketchy in itself, because there are no consistent statewide policy on record keeping when it comes to homeschooling families, because the policy is so disparate across the United States. I'm in Maryland now. I can go to Georgia and have a completely different policy in place regarding homeschooling, right? And so the data that we have is sketchy to begin with, but it you know, before 2020, it was 3 to 5%. Now it's 16% and only growing, right? So that's the first myth. Black people been homeschooling. It's not new. So don't try to come up in the culture and try to now say, you know, to set standards, and particularly to try to replicate a traditional schooling environment. And that is probably the second myth, is that when folks are homeschooling, that's not what we're trying to do for the most part, is replicate what it is that you find in these traditional school spaces. And when I say traditional school spaces, I'm talking about private, public, charter schools, right? And folks homeschool differently, depending on what the unique challenges or dynamic of their family is. I'm, was parenting one child, right? And so, and I had a gig lifestyle, meaning that, I was an adjunct professor. I had writing gigs and things like that. So I took her on field trips. I took her on shoots with me. I have an arts organization. She was technical staff. So there were certain things that she did because it was specific to the lifestyle of our family. For other families, it may look completely different. Another myth is that homeschooling is virtual learning and that they're synonymous. And that is a damn lie. That is not the truth. Some families may include virtual learning within their curriculum, but that is not, they are not synonymous. And so for someone to say, my child's at home and they on the computer, they're at a virtual school, I'm homeschooling. That is not homeschooling and virtual, being part of a virtual school, not the same thing, right? Also, homeschooling, you hear a lot of people talking about it. It's about privilege, right? That only privileged people can do it. My colleague, Dr. Cheryl Field Smith, has a book out specifically on single Black mothers who are homeschooling. And some of the members of the cohort that she studied were on welfare. Some were working in addition to homeschooling. So the dynamic and this idea of what a homeschooling parent or a homeschooling family looks like has really been shot out of the water with believing that it's a two-parent home or that it's an upper middle class or wealthy household. I know I was not wealthy. I am not wealthy now. And I homeschooled off and on for 13 years. And my daughter now is currently, I graduated her from our homeschool this past May. And I homeschooled her completely through high school and off and on through elementary. But we homeschooled completely through high school, and she was earning her associate's degree while she was in high school. So she graduated with an associate's, and so she's now at the University of San Francisco, and she has full ride, right? But that was largely because she was accruing credits.
So it can be. So Dr. Ali Coleman, I'm sorry, we have to wrap it here.
Okay.
So one, I want to invite people to follow up with your work at blackfamilyhomeschool.org. And then to also know we're going to have you back somewhere on this platform, my show, back on the RemiX somewhere. We have to have more of this conversation. But I wanted to just thank you very much for coming through at least a little bit and breaking down some of these myths. Yeah. And we'll invite people to check out more of your work there. And again, like I said, we'll have to have you back to discuss this some more. Because there's so much more to get into.
It's so much. You can see I run my mouth, but thank you so much for having me. And I love talking about homeschooling. And I just love talking about the things that Black families are doing. So thank you for having me.
Anytime. And thank you for doing that work. And we'll be back in touch. It's always good to see you, Dr. Khadijah Ali Coleman, blackfamilyhomeschool.org. And we will keep it moving here at the RemiX Morning Show, Black Power Media. Thanks, everybody. Let's get back to it. Peace. Right on. Look at Kamal's books. Anyway, big shout out to Dr. Khadijah Ali Coleman and all those doing this kind of work, trying to provide alternatives for folks, because schooling in this society is madness. Look at this dude with his Chomsky, Yeah, we get it. We get it. We get it.
Kamal had the receipts. You're not just going to sit up here and talk about Kamal Daddy like this, man. You just not gonna
I gotta be my daddy.
I'm familiar with some of that work, and I just my recall struggles. I admit my memory is not the best. I just don't remember Chomsky in the way Kamal does, but I definitely appreciate Chomsky's contribution to progressive thought. He's been certainly helpful to me. One of the points that Max Blumenthal makes that I agree with, though, and when you're comparing, for instance, some of these folks, Michael Parenti would be my favorite above and beyond Chomsky if we're picking white scholars. And Inventing Reality as a media analysis, I think, came out before Manufacturing Consent. and is as strong, if not stronger, in analysis. And then we also have to remember that manufacturing consent was co-authored by the late Ed Herman, who was also known as more radical than Chomsky. So shout out. Yeah. And check out the interview I did with one of his proteges, Dr. Chris Simpson. I mixwhatilike.org. You can check out that interview from some years ago and hear about the real Ed Herman and his contribution. But anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, shout out to Dr. Ali Coleman and all those people doing that work.
I mean,
that's a lot.
She raised so many issues and questions that even me as a childless person have, because there's many reasons why I don't have children, but one of the reasons is because I would feel bad if I had to send my children to public schools so they could learn that they were inferior, so their smartness could be diminished because their exuberance would be punished. Like that bothers me. But at the same time, I'm not financially stable enough to stay at home with the kid for 18 years and homeschool them. So she brought up a lot of questions that I, even as a child-free person, had. So everyone in the chat is like, have Dr. Coleman back on, please.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the issue, by the way, of homeschooling is not just a one of economics, but it's also one of ability. Like some people, myself included, are just not suited to that kind of teaching. Like to be at home all day teaching young people, particularly young children, would not have been my forte. So, I mean, I think you have to have a particular ability, skill set. Now, the only thing I would say is that if you are in certain public schools, and again, with a certain level of ability of parental involvement, some of the dangers that you rightly lay out can be mitigated to a certain extent. But it may be my number one contradiction, like my internal contradiction, something I struggle with incredibly, all the time. But so I'm just, anyway, glad.
Two quick things on my part is one is, I'm sorry, like two quick things. One, I completely agree with you, Jad, is the temperament and the ability to do the homeschooling. And again, this is not, she mentioned about virtual learning not being the same thing.
That's right.
But just from trying to do the virtual learning at the early stages of the pandemic with our, at the time, 8-year-old and 5-year-old, obviously nothing else in the household got done. It was constantly trying to get them back to the computer. It was constantly working with them individually to get their work done. And so it became one of those. And then the kids, like as she mentioned, like most kids are not screaming, let's homeschool. They see other kids. They also agree with other kids, and so they're reacting to having to be home in front of the computer. And so that was one sort of that's one of the several considerations around not being able to. And then the whole choice that this country puts you in, right? Public schools, particularly from neighborhoods that a lot of us come from, under-resourced. You got cats doing things, and again, for various reasons. Things that, when you look back upon, things that you either saw, participated in, heard about, are things that you are like, would you send your child to that environment? And I think one of our biggest contradictions is figuring out, and this is going to be a terrible way to say it, what can you teach more against, right? Sometimes it's like, can I teach against racism more? Can I teach against some of the shit that happens in poor resource schools, right? And it's big contradict. Like, my wife, she did the whole thing we did about where we moved in order to get into the quote unquote better school system. Something as a going up in Brooklyn was never even considered. At best, you got a fake address, right? No one physically moved, but now we got a little bit more means, and so you follow a school system sometimes when you're in a position to do it, to try to eke out what you think may be a better chance at education. And where we put our kids at, now we're having certain regrets because they're coming home every day with stories, right? The blonde kid said this, right? The boy said that kind of shit.
Don't get me started on that. Yeah,
like,
I'm in a whole world of shit with that. Yeah.
And then obviously the curriculum, that pro-Eurocentric, pro-American democracy, pro-revolutionary, you start to remember how easily they seep it into you at the very beginnings of your so-called education, that it's stuck with you and it's stuck there, and you have to again fight against it. So yeah.
Shout out to my man Marcus Klein, my brother, Freedom Home Academy, not only just with independent school, but developing homeschool curriculums, folks like Mwalamu Baruti. The beauty of now is just like the whole vegan vegetarian movement. You know what I'm saying? There was a time, maybe about 20 so years ago, that veganism wasn't as big as it is now, just like with homeschooling and African-centered school and all that. But it's so many different ways and means. I guess the main thing nowadays would be just being tapped into certain communities in order to be able to get the resources that will assist in things like what you were talking about, Kamal, like the whole pandemic side. When you're dealing with, yes, it is difficult sometimes, dealing with your own children, depending on when you start. You know what I'm saying? Because of the fact that we've been programmed and conditioned so much to kind of go along with tradition. And tradition says that we go to public school, we do what we do, or we go to private school, whatever, so on and so forth. And one of the things that I found was oftentimes, even in the quote unquote conscious community, in the back of many folks' minds, just from talking to them, it's almost like a instant inferiority thing when it comes to, well, will they learn math? Will they learn this? Will they learn that? And that's the beauty of, like I said, schools like Freedom Home Academy, because of the fact that it's not just dealing with, okay, you're an African and we're anti-capitalist and so on and so forth. No, it's also higher learning when it comes to mathematics. You know what I'm saying? It's competitive when it comes to languages. You have 6-7-year-old children that are being taught 2-3 different languages. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, we have to, whatever it is we do, even if it's public school, the whole debriefing, deprogramming, but also inserting our own values and culture inside of our children once they return home, because of the fact that, like the old saying goes, you know what I'm saying, you can't expect people that won't treat you right to teach you right. We know that education in America is really indoctrination. It's not about education at all, because if we were talking about true education, we would talk about power. And if we was talking about power,
just real quick, sorry about that, Kalonji, but sorry, my bad. Just to not to blow up either of our spots, Kamal, but years ago we were talking about working on a project together, and I remember my interest in one of the many projects I don't follow up on, but one of my key interests in wanting to work with you on that project was to try to put something out that was discussing how do people organize in specific settings, like, where some of us find ourselves, where we're not in black meccas and where we have all of these options. How do we do this kind of work in those settings? I remember at one point we were looking for an African-centered school in the area that we could, and the options are not plentiful, and then to be real, even within those spaces, the quality of those spaces is not consistent all throughout. So in one of the ones we looked at no longer exists. And when I went to visit, at least I could see, like, this is not, ideologically it may be closer to what we want, but it was not set up structurally, financially, and in many other structural ways. It was not set up to sustain, and it didn't. And so, like, so these are just some of the issues that I struggle with. Like, what we don't all have all of the options in areas where we find ourselves that we might want, and then what can we do as options? So I'm very much, and by the way, to those asking to see more of Dr. Ali Coleman, please stay tuned. Let me just say that I don't think it's a far cry to suggest that you will be seeing much more from her in the near future. So stick around at BPM, and I appreciate her and all those doing this kind of work, because boy, oh boy. Yeah. Anyway, I know we got to keep it moving here at the Remix. I think the ear doctor is set to come on back, and then if I'm not mistaken, we got another special guest coming shortly after that. Did I see that correctly? Or
I don't think so. I think that.
Oh, you don't think? Okay.
No, I think that was Jackie's guest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. And Jackie will, by the way, be back with us tomorrow morning.
Woo!
The duties of life, like you never know who's going to be here, pop up, and who can't be here when it's just easy.
And Jackie is coming fresh off of her Colombia trip, so I'm
Yeah.
dying to hear about her experience down in
We-
Cali. So
We know they got some party on.
Right.
Some of the footage leaked. But so yeah, definitely want to hear more about that. So everybody's gonna have to tune back in, of course, tomorrow morning to get the Columbia files, Jackie's trip notes. But anyway, let's get to the ear doctor, and then of course we got got some other things we can get to here at the remix. Let's go. What's up, sir?
Yeah. Hey, so I just wanted to add in real quick. My whole thing with the whole homeschool thing was I want to make sure that my kids are able to socialize with other people besides just them. My thing is teach them the education at home first. I know a lot of us ain't able to do that and might not know our history and stuff like that. But if we teach them there first, then send them out into these possibly public schools, they already got their mind and foundation right. So they're able to still deal with other people.
I want to point something out real quick, because when we were homeschooling our children, one of the things that we did was made sure that we kept them active out in. There's so many resources for homeschooling parents, particularly in the places like Atlanta. I know, like Jared was saying, some places you might not have all these resources, but they have homeschooling days at the different museums, so on and so forth. And I would argue that they received more well-rounded culture and an opportunity to build with other homeschool children because of the fact that they were in this particular network. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many networks out there, and I think that's something I'm going to challenge BPM perhaps down the line to start to list some of these resources, maybe on the website or whatever. Not just the book list and all that, but resources when it comes to folks who can homeschool and you know what I'm saying, and who has these curriculums and whatnot, because it's not as bad as it seems. It seems like, whoa, how are we going to do this? But it's really not like that.
No doubt. Well, we'll take y'all to a quick break and we come right back. Let's get
Remix.
Yeah. What's good, everybody? This is the Remix Morning Show. I am the Ear Doctor. And right about now, I was kind of thinking about, if I was to leave America, I would want to go most likely to the islands or go to Africa, maybe Ghana or somewhere like that, and live so I can, do my thing. But I started thinking, like, is Africa colonized now by China? I mean, who would be, you want to get away from American rule, but if you go to Africa now, who's really running Africa? So I started watching some of our BPM shows, and I came across one of Black Power, Black Myths, and they was talking about China colonizing Africa. So I wanted to show y'all a little piece of it. Maybe y'all want to go check it out afterwards and see what y'all think about it. So check this out. This is the Black Myths podcast right here.
It says the new colonialists, a 14-page special report on China's thirst for resources. And then it has a picture of men on camels, and one of them is holding up a Chinese flag as they walk across the desert. This is very dramatic, but it's pushing this agenda that now China is somehow the new colonial power that I guess is jumping in to take the place of the West, which is just funny to hear the West make these claims. So what are some of the claims more specifically that they use to try to say it's colonialism, that as far as what China is doing in Africa?
First, let's even just talk about this visual that you were creating. I don't even think that's the worst one I've seen. I've seen a thirsty dragon like swallowing up the African continent, and I've seen very like anti-communist things where it's like Africa's now like grabbed by a red claw, like really, really, really racist stuff actually in terms of the actual imagination of it. But the big one that I think has had in recent years had taken up the headlines is this myth around debt trap diplomacy, right?
Right.
And I want to talk about it a little bit because there has been really important research being done, even in the US, that actually debunks this debt trap diplomacy, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Pompeo. I think it was Mike Pompeo who kind of got it going, this idea of debt trap diplomacy. I think it came out of his mouth quite early on in his...
Pompeo did. Rex Tillerson was doing it.
Yeah.
We should also acknowledge the realities about China. China's island building in the South China Sea.
So as you can see right there was a very good interview. You go check that out. That's Black Myths. And yeah, I'm really trying to figure out, because it seems like, to me, it seems like Asia, the Arabs have been colonizing before even the Europeans. If we were to read a little bit of history books, they've been doing it for a minute. So that's just my thoughts. Will I be moving from one colonizer to another? Just thinking. That's my thoughts for the day. Let's get back to the Remix Morning Show, y'all. All right.
Hey, right on, man. I love that you do these clips, Ear Doctor, to remind not only us but others of all the great work on the platform. I do remember that conversation, which was awesome. And their conclusion was that China is not colonizing the continent, that their engagement is very different. And I don't remember the details, of course, but are more sustaining and supportive of the continent than extractive and exploitative. But my question still remains, you know, why is it still necessary for the African continent to need the investment of China or some other outsider? And why don't we see the inequalities within the continent closing or disappearing? So, but anyway, thank you.
This goes back to the destruction of the Black civilization. And we talking about Arabs and Asians coming and colonizing. The only thing they didn't do is what the Europeans do is take your culture and everything.
That's important, don't you think? I mean, that's an important distinction, don't you think, Ear Doctor?
Yeah, definitely. They at least let us keep our culture. But
I say niggas ain't over in Africa speaking Mandarin, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, not yet, anyway. But
not yet. I was going to say we might need to be if you look, you know.
That's a good question though. Why are they still dependent on outside resources?
The same reason we're still dependent on outside resources. We are a microcosm of a macrocosm. The same shit that we're going through over here, we are a smaller version of what's going on in Africa. And I think that part of the issue is we keep saying they and them and us instead of saying we. And that's why we fucked up. You know what I mean? It's the same shit we don't even when we talk about buying black and all that shit, we still depend on outsiders to fund our shit. We depend on outsiders to eat in our community, to give us gas and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's why we have to figure out how to do this shit here, and perhaps we can take it over there.
And I wonder how the trading is. I know we got ships out here on the waters that can't even bring stuff in. How trading is going between these different countries. It's a whole mess out here right now. I mean, everything is back ordered. If you try to get something, it's ridiculous.
That has everything to do with the dismantling of American manufacturing, right? I mean, the reason why we are depending on these supply chain issues or our economy is stuttering based on these supply chain issues because we don't make shit in America. And that's a problem. And that was what people were screaming 25, 30 years ago when NAFTA and all these free trade agreements and deals were made. Like literally all the jobs, all the manufacturing jobs, all the shit that you didn't necessarily need a college degree in order to work and provide a very decent living for you and your family, them shits is gone. They are gone. So yeah, that's the problem there. Like we don't make anything in this country. Yeah. This country is wholly dependent on globalization and trade from Asia.
In about a year,
which the country created, right? The country wanted the capitalists wanted to get the cheaper labor, and so they went out to places like Mexico. They went out to Asia because they didn't care about their white American counterpart workers. They didn't care about black workers. They cared about their profit margins. And then China's kind of flipped the script on them. They speak like China in particular was like, we'll do the grunt work in the world, and they use it as a basis, right? Whether or not fair or not, whether or not it was done in a way that was egalitarian or not. but they use it as a basis to build up a national economy. And the only reason the Western powers, again, are quote unquote mad at China, see China as an enemy, and create the narrative of China being the new imperialist, is because China said, wait a minute, we're not just going to be the cheap labor. We're not going to just manufacture toys. We're going to go into other aspects of economic building, technology. We're going to control technology. We're going to start to work our way into these markets again, whether or not people agree with sort of a market system or not. China decided that it would not be sort of a doormat for Western capitalists to come in and do what it did in terms of getting cheap labor. And now it's challenging the West around the world. And again, another part of the argument is it a better world to have a bipolar world as opposed to a unipolar world where the United States and Europe get to decide how world economies get to continue to control how markets operate, and that includes in places obviously like in Africa, which makes again, we all talk about the raw materials of the world, but yet Africa, even though usually the saying is if you control the raw materials, right, you get to set the market price and so forth, but it's the flip, right? What the Western economies do is say we're not going to buy the raw materials at a certain price. We're only going to buy it at this price, or we're just going to come take the raw materials, or we're going to put that dictator in who's going to sell us the raw materials on the cheap anyway. So there's a lot of reasons why obviously Africa is beholden to the West, and they see China, again, whether these folks are revolutionaries or not, but they see China as a potential alternative to having to rely on Western terms, Western imperialism. And since China doesn't have the track record of imperialism, particularly in Africa, that it may have in other places in Southwest Asia, they see it as a way to sort of balance, let's say, the forces of the West versus the sort of the East in terms of how economies are developed. Again, it's not revolutionary, it's not radical, but it is kind of a real world attempt to suggest that, you know, there are going to be other ways in which we build this economy as opposed to always having to cope with the IMF terms and the World Bank terms, but maybe there are going to be some other terms which won't be as heinous in terms of what the loan payments are, and even the changes in the construction of the government and the economies that the World Bank and the IMF puts on in terms of neoliberalism. So if you want this money, you got to sell all the things that you own as sort of a national resource, right? You got to sell your telephone company, you got to sell your mines, you got to sell anything that the government uses to make a profit and make it into private capital. And that's the only way you get these loans.
Well, big up to all my Africans here in the bro. Let's get it together. I'll catch y'all tomorrow.
Part of the
Right
issue
on,
too
you.
is you talking about you have the United States trying to outthink China. How can you outthink 1.5 billion people? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, you know, it's just such arrogance. Somebody's gonna be thinking. And I think the thing with what you to your point in regards to Africa choosing the East over the West, I mean, you know, China has done one thing, and they've mastered the art of wholesale. You know what I'm saying? They always come in and they're able to undercut their competitors and to be able to maneuver from there in all walks of life, including politics, because of the fact that what you're talking about here, they're saying, okay, boom, we know you're sick of the IMF, we know you're sick of this bullshit right here, you know, bring us on. But the thing is, you know, we have to ask ourselves at the end of the day, is it the lesser two evils? Is it like this two-party system? Either you choose this or you choose that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that, you know, once we decolonize our minds, what they say, free your mind and your ass will follow, we'll really be on point.
Well, if you all don't mind, I mean, we mentioned this earlier. I think this a discussion of decolonization is a good way to quickly segue to mentioning some of these other stories that we briefly brought up earlier. For instance, the paroling of David Gilbert, who's looking particularly Amish in this particular photo here. during his arrest, but you know, as it says here, former Weather Underground radical David Gilbert has been granted parole after 40 years behind bars for his role in a deadly 1981 Brinks robbery that was a violent echo of left-wing extremism born in the 1960s, the state's corrections department said Tuesday. I love this phrasing from the Associated Press, and maybe one day we should do it. We should talk about that. I used to give a presentation in my media studies classes about the history of the AP. This is, I'll just say, it's consistent that the Associated Press would present it in this way. That's been its historical role. But you know, we can come back to that. But anyway, but all that, the framing notwithstanding, I'm a big fan of David Gilbert, and I'm happy that he's getting paroled, and I hope he gets to live at least some enjoyable years in relative freedom, given his work. And any of you want to say anything more about him in particular? And then I know we wanted to also talk a little bit about Maroon.
Yeah, I mean, David Gilbert definitely, you know, when you talk about the difference between an ally and a comrade, you know what I'm saying? He, you know, folks like him and Marilyn Buck and some of these others from the Weather Underground and the May 19th Communist crew and SDS and all that. These are folks who, they didn't just put up Black Lives Matter signs in the fucking window. You know what I'm saying? In many cases, they supplied troops like the BLA and other Panthers and so on and so forth. And they literally, they dealt with this with these imperialists and these capitalists as you know, they recognized that they were at war. You know what I mean? And they weren't begging to be released. So I appreciate David going in there as a stand-up guy. And I want to say that it's been a great couple days. You had Maroon being released, you have David Gilbert being released, and here in Atlanta, two of these pigs who murdered Jamarian Robinson in East Point, Georgia, was just indicted yesterday. You know what I'm saying? One U.S. Marshal and one police officer. So it's been on the scope of quote unquote signs of justice. You know, it's been a good last couple of days, and I hope that that momentum continues throughout the week.
Really quickly, I just want to add that. Yeah,
sure.
so I just really quick, like, you know, I gotten opportunity, you know, through the work of supporting political prisoners to actually go to Attica and sit down with David and talk to him and hear about his history. And so I echo Kalanji's sentiments. These folks were fighters, right? They understood left politics to not just be about civic engagement, right? Pressuring the Democratic Party. They were about creating a base of operations. They understood the histories of radical movements and revolutionary movements around the world, and they participated like-minded. They organized people to join collectives and organizations, right? Just as the sort of fellow workers in the Panthers and other organizations found that the work was at the base, was at organizing people, and then through organizing people, you may try to influence local politics or even national politics, but you also create a base of operations, knowing that still work had to get done in the community. And I think those folks really brought that value to what the work was and what the work is. And I think the silencing of them through, again, the destruction of those organizations, the imprisonment of those individuals, shows that the state knew what these folks were impactful and meaningful, and again left us with folks who are strictly engaged in civic engagement as a main course of strategy, as opposed to organizing people. So all praise is due again to having these folks out. It's a great thing, but I also take it with a grain of salt. So I also, you know, am clear that this wasn't a people's movement, right? This was really more about whether or not the state just felt we can let them go now because there's no big deal, right? We've done all we can to squash that movement, and they're coming out to like people who support them, but not necessarily a movement that there's not going to be thousands in the streets welcoming them home, right? So I don't take it as necessarily a people's victory, but I do take it as a victory to have these folks out, to have these folks with their families, to have these folks with their comrades, the other people get to hear their stories and tales, and that people can put that stuff in their organizing so that we can build those people victories.
And shout out to Black Power. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to play this clip real quick of Russell III. But go ahead. Go ahead and say.
No. I was just shouting out Black Power Media for the work, because one of the things, I was going through some videos yesterday, and I realized, we have, for those of you who are new to Black Power Media, we have interviews with folks from the Weather Underground, from SDS, from MOVE, from AIM, American Indian Movement, from the Black Liberation Army, from the Black Panther Party, from SNCC, from the Revolutionary Action Movement, you know what I'm saying? And so on and so forth. So I think that, it's safe to say, when we talk about revolutionary fronts, you know what I'm saying, coming with this type of media, we need your support, because of the fact that it's so much more, even from the continent, Lumumba and so on and so forth.
To keep going. I mean, we got community movement builders. You got the whole FTP. We got Black Alliance for Peace, All African People's Revolutionary Party. All of these groups are literally represented and incorporated in our regular programming here. So I mean, my bad. I didn't mean to,
No. And I thank you, because I'm hoping that the viewers understand the value of this particular effort that we're making, because I don't even think that we do at times. And like I said, saying what I'm saying right now was just a result of me looking for something on the channel yesterday and realizing, I'm like, oh shit, we have a whole lot of this, all of this stuff that we have, this material and all that. And Kamal can attest just from the organizing standpoint. Yes, we were organizing in the early 2000s, the 90s, the late 80s, so on and so forth. A lot of these folks that we're talking about, when we talk about political prisoners, either that we interviewed or that we're talking about getting out, these are political prisoners that we fought for over 30 years. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just a news report. You know what I'm saying? We organize with Russell and Teresa Schultz. You know what I'm saying? And so many others, the MOVE organization. So a lot of these folks that you're seeing getting out, these are people that we had on our posters, on our walls, set the captives free. You know what I'm saying? And finally, we get into, see some of them walk out. So, it is a blessing and it's an honor not to just view Black Power Media, but to be a part of it. So I just wanted to say that, and keep that in mind when we talk about Patreons and supporting what it is we're doing. I'm sorry, Jared.
Just quickly, I love all of that. And someone who's been on our platforms for years, Russell III here, just to want to play a little bit of him coming out yesterday.
What's the news, Russ?
Salute. Yep. So, again, thank all of y'all. I just want to say again that it's been a long road, but the family, my dad, obviously, all of those over the years who have put a bunch of time and energy in, and are again, praying, loving, fighting the good fight, and again, that's what this all is centered around. It's been centered around humanity. It's still centered around humanity.
It's probably a cop, right?
We have to keep pushing that. We have to keep growing that. We have to keep educating people around, these struggles for humanity, because that's what it is at the end of the day. And it was a very kind of heart-moving hearing where my dad actually got to speak, and so a lot of people, including myself, want to speak for my dad, but get the transcript and you can hear it for yourself. And it's not me, it's not somebody else, it's not his writings, it's him telling you what he feels about his actions, what he feels ideologically right now, not what he felt 20 years ago, not what he felt 2 years ago, not what he felt 2 minutes ago, but what he felt right then when the judge was asking him, or Brett was asking him, what do you feel about your actions? What do you feel about your ideologies? So it's all in the transcripts. But more importantly, what's in the transcripts are the evidence that the prisons don't have the capabilities to take care of not just their healthy prisoners, they definitely don't have the ability to take care of their geriatric prisoners, and that they have effectively killed my father. That's what's in the transcript that's more important, is that they killed my father. The judge is shocked that there's a lack of care at that level. And so if the judge is shocked that there's a lack of care at that level, there's a lawsuit here, not just for my father, but for prisoners in general that have historically had poor health.
So we will link to the whole video. Obviously, we encourage people to check out the whole 20-minute plus video. But I think he raises a number of important points, and something that has already been said here about the contradiction about this moment is, we're very happy that they're getting out, but in what condition and at what cost? Right. And one little piece that I feel is being abused in this moment is that, or misunderstood, is that some will take this, to Kamal's point, as an actual victory, as some sort of response to some sort of ethereal movement. And I would want to echo a little bit, I think, of what you were saying, Kamal, that that's not what this is. And we want them out. They deserve to be out, but we have to recognize what exactly this is. And the way the AP framed it is exactly what I think the state is still saying. Like, this is not, we're sorry, we made a mistake, we recognize the error in our ways. It's like, no, we're going to let you have this one evil terrorist at the end of his last few minutes and take your little victory and be on, So, and but anyway.
Well, Kalanji has made this point before. I mean, John Hinckley, who assassinated or attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan, is out of jail. Like, they let him out. They're not even supervising him no more. And same with Sirhan Sirhan, the person who was accused of assassinating RFK, they're about to let him out of jail. So if these people have either assassinated or attempted to assassinate very high-level political figures, presidential candidates, and the president, how is it that they are able to be free as birds after doing their time, but these Black Power revolutionary soldiers have to be pretty much on their deathbed to maybe get out?
Yeah. And they did the same thing with Marilyn Buck. I mean, Marilyn Buck was released 10 days before she transitioned, because she was in her final stages of cancer, and she was a white woman. But the problem was that she was, they considered her a member of the Black Liberation Army because of the fact that, her works, her and David and folks like that. So, I agree. It's not a victory, but the beautiful thing about it's just like what Juliana Lumumba said the other day when she said they wanted the remains, the 2 teeth that these bastards had of her father. It's better that that someone like Russell Maroon Schultz or Marilyn Buck transitions on our side of the barricades. You know what I'm saying? Opposed to them transitioning inside of those prisons and them doing whatever they want to the bodies, because of the fact that we got to keep that in mind too. These motherfuckers have no remorse and no love for us. They're proven terrorists and necrophiliacs and all kinds of shit. So,
well, as we covered earlier this year, Philadelphia reminded us what they do with the remains of our heroes and movement with the MOVE movement. And I mean, they were very clear about that. So you're right. That's right on. And
2 quick things too. One is, the obvious reason why they've been held and not let go is because even though these people killed or attempted to kill political figureheads, they didn't seek to overturn the real system, right? And our folks, including our white comrades, were attempting to overturn a system of oppression. And so they have to be taught a lesson. Our movement has to be taught a lesson. And that lesson is that when we capture you, we will hold you until your lifeblood is drained out of you for the most part, or until we think that your usefulness on the street doesn't mean that there's not that much of a threat to us, because again, we've already destroyed your movements to a point where they're either rebuilding or sinking or infighting and then the rest of it. And again, everybody's dependent on the Democratic Party for victories. So I feel like that's to me the lesson of where we're at, and partly why, of course, some of these folks are getting out. And then 2, it's interesting, going back to a little bit of our earlier conversation, this is a victory in the sense of, talking about Black Power media, Black radical news outlets are covering these stories, right, in a way that is honoring who these people are and who these people what these people represent. Our so-called and the enemy's propaganda machines are also covering these stories to mischaracterize and to talk about these people in certain ways to make them continue to be believed to be enemies, to be feared, and to be vilified. The so-called white left media is not doing any stories on these political prisoners and their releases because they don't consider our movement important enough to do that. It was Julian Assange, to Jared's point all the time, it was Julian Assange, it was Edward Snowden coming home from Russia. It would be nonstop 24/7.
Chelsea Manning,
Chelsea Manning, nonstop 24/7 coverage on these so-called left progressive outlets. But they won't spend a modicum of time covering the release of Jaleel Montequin, Maroon Russell Schultz, David Gilbert, and others, because they don't consider our movements. Our movements are at best subordinate to what they think is important, and they'll cover international events before they cover our movements here in the United States. So we always got to remember that even folks who have some allyship don't even understand the context of the movements that our folks come from and what they were trying to achieve, and are in some ways scared of our movements because they still in some ways benefit from being white in America and having these platforms and talking about political hypocrisy or left wing, right wing fighting, or the AOC and the rest of it.
The squad,
the squad. But they face no danger in doing that.
That's right.
They face no real danger in doing that. And that includes Chomsky. They face
look
no
at
real
Ridenhouse,
danger
though.
in doing that. So
look at the white boy Ridenhouse. You can't even call victims no more. The judge said that legally, you can't even call these folks victims. You can call them terrorists or looters and rioters and all that type shit. But this white boy goes out and shoot people, and they're not victims.
Kills people.
Even though he bought the gun illegal, even though he crossed state lines and shit. You know what I'm saying? I guess he's not even a suspect. He's a fucking patriot. You know what I'm saying? So this is what we deal with in America. So
absolutely. I mean, the Black revolutionaries are still more of a threat, even at old age, even infirmed, than the so-called January 6th insurrectionists, right? These people are getting probation. They're getting home detention. They stormed the fucking Capitol. They beat the shit out of cops, okay? And they are getting slaps on the wrist. So that should give everyone a clear example as to whom America really feels are its enemies and are the biggest threat to its system.
That's right.
On that
That's
note.
it. On that note, yes, indeed. Shout out to everybody who came through today. Dr. Khadijah Ali Coleman among them. Shout out to my co-hosts and colleagues and all the remixers out there and all the people who will see this after the fact. We appreciate you too. Hit that like, share, subscribe, join, Patreon, blackpowermedia.org, all that good stuff. And the remix will be back here tomorrow morning. Same black time,
Africa,
same
baby,
black
you know
channel.
what it is. Yeah.
Remix. Peace.